I feel like I've been handed the keys to the family jewels. And I have in a way, because these are the keys to this Kurtis sports car, a car that has a very special place in the history of Motor Trend. You see, this particular car, Kurtis No. 1, appeared on the cover of the very first issue of Motor Trend in September 1949. And Wally Parks, founding editor of our sister publication, Hot Rod magazine, drove this car to an incredible 142.515 miles an hour at the very first Bonneville speed trials. You want history? You want significance? This car has it in spades. This Kurtis is a rare beast. Just 2 prototypes and 16 production cars, of which this was the first, were built at race car engineer Frank Kurtis's shop in Glendale, California in 1949. This hand-built car's rarity made the restoration very challenging, says owner Dwayne Ashmead.
It was extremely hard to find it because they made 16 actual models plus 2 prototypes, and it's my understanding there are only 3 or 4 of them still in existence, so it was very hard. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time with the money and was able to buy it. To find this number 1 car, the one that set the land speed record on the Bonneville Salt Flats, was absolutely a thrill. I didn't know I'd purchased that car when I bought it. I just had a Kurtis sports car, and that's all I wanted. But as we took it apart, found the serial number on the frame, and realized what we had, I can't describe how exciting that was. Wally Parks set the land speed record on the Bonneville Salt Flats driving this car. I had Wally sign the car. He told me at the time that he signed the car, he said, "This is the only car I'm ever going to sign because this is the only car worthy of my signature." This car appeared on the cover of Motor Trend magazine, first issue. That was exciting to learn of that because many of the small details I didn't know. But when I went to Motor Trend magazine and saw the pictures, the original pictures of the car, then I knew what to do. When I restored the car, there were 2 major challenges. One is that Frank Kurtis wanted to run a Studebaker in the car, not a Ford engine. But, and Studebaker kept saying, "We'll have a V8, we'll have a V8, we'll have a V8, but they never came forth. When Kurtis was back at Indianapolis, Ford said, "Well, why don't you use a Ford? We've got a lot of those. You can come to, we'll deliver those to you." Kurtis went back to California and said, "We're going to go to Fords." Well, this car was partially built. So there are Ford parts on it, there are Studebaker parts on it. So finding which part went where was a major challenge. If a Ford part didn't fit, you tried a Studebaker part, or vice versa. Ultimately, it went together that way. That was one challenge. Second challenge, as you can imagine, with only 16 cars, there aren't a lot of parts around, spare parts. This car had been wrecked. It didn't have all of the parts, and trying to find those parts, such as the windshield frame, was an extreme challenge. But eventually we succeeded, and there it is.
This car has covered just 28 miles since its meticulous restoration. It looks better than new. But what's it like to drive this irreplaceable piece of Motor Trend history? Let's find out. Well, it's a bit like dancing with your grandma. I mean, this is a valuable old car, so I'm taking things very easy. But it is very easy to drive. You know, that V8 Ford's got plenty of torque. It's only a 3-speed transmission, but you can just shift up early and it cruises along quite nicely. The ride's pretty good too for an old sports car. You know, Frank Kurtis had this theory. A lot of guys set their cars up really hard at the racetrack. Frank liked to have his car set up a little bit soft so the suspension could work. And you could feel it in this car. It's really quite a comfortable ride. The steering, this wheel looks like you should be driving a bus or something, and it's really close to your chest. But, you know, back in the day, you had to muscle a car around the corners. There's probably about 20 degrees of slack on the straight ahead, so you're kind of aiming it down the road. I'm not quite sure what Wally Parks would have been like at this thing at 142 miles an hour. At Bonneville, at least, you had lots of wide open space, and you had to just aim for a point in the distance. The brakes, drum brakes all around, and you've got to pump them in this old car. But, you know, It might be old now, but back in the day, this thing would have been fast, and for the time, it would have been quite agile. American muscle meets European sporting tradition. Frank Kurtis had the idea 15 years before Carroll Shelby thought of the Cobra.